IB check. It is 6:25, now 6:26, so I think we're ready to let in our guest.
Okay.
Thank you.
You can see them.
Good evening, everyone. Zeta Rho Omega, Upsilon Xi Omega, and Sigma Chi chapters of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated will begin our 20th Congressional District Candidates Forum. We will start with meditation from Ms. Margaret Hayes from Upsilon Xi Omega chapter. Ms. Hayes?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let us pray. Dear God, we thank you for life. We thank you for another day. We thank you for our homes and our families. We thank you for our health. We thank you for the opportunity to serve others. We pray that you will bless all program participants, our candidates, and we ask that you continue to bless Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and our leaders. We pray that our service through this forum informs and educates the community and brings you glory. It is in your Son's name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Our chapter presidents will provide us with welcome and opening remarks.
Good evening. I am the proud president of the Zeta Rho Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I first want to start off by thanking Lisa and Henrietta in your connection committees for your leadership. Thank you to the Upsilon Xi Omega chapter for leading this event tonight, as we have a partnership that we do this event annually when there is an election and we rotate the leadership. I am excited tonight to hear from our candidates. We are very interested in our communities, and we know that everything we do in our program area, from health to building our economic legacy to HBCU scholarships, it all relates to public policy. Everything that we do in service has a policy perspective attached to it. So as we move forward tonight, we are listening with open ears. We're taking notes. We have a very aggressive agenda that's been set by our esteemed international president, Dr. Glenda Glover, our regional director, Carolyn Goff Randolph. I also want to take a moment to recognize our former international Tamiokas, Dolores McKinley, who is a member of the Zeta Rho Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and Dr. Sylvia Sloan Jones, who served as the South Atlantic Regional Connection Chair to the International Alpha Kappa Alpha International Connection Committee. God bless you, and I'm excited. I'm listening as we get this flight flying to higher heights. And thank all of you candidates for joining us aboard Flight 1908 tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Osgood. Dr. Ramona Relaford, who is the president of the Unstoppable Upsilon Xi Omega chapter, had a work-related issue, but she will be joining us later this evening, and at that time you will hear words of greeting and remarks from her as well. So with that, we will move right into the explanation of the 20th Congressional District area, which will be presented by Mrs. Odessa Bennett of Zeta Rho Omega.
We should have took her somewhere.
Good evening,
Who's going to
everyone.
control us?
I would like to just give you a little synopsis of the 20th
Oh,
Congressional District and the makeup of that particular district. As a result of the passing of our beloved Congressman L.C. Hastings on April 6th, this position became available. The Florida 20th Congressional District is an electoral district for the U.S. Congress located in the Southeast Florida area. The majority of the makeup Black precincts in the area of Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, includes also West Palm Beach and the International Airport of West Palm Beach, the southern shores of Lake Okeechobee, and Belle Glade. The ethnicity of that makeup is Americans. On November the 2nd, 2021, there will be a primary election that will be held for this particular position. And then again in January 11th, 2022, the general election will be held. So as you can see, this area is a large area, and it has been represented very well with Congressman L.T. Hastings. So we have other candidates that are running, and we're going to hear from them tonight. With that being said, I will introduce you now to Miss Kayla Button-Reither, who will introduce our moderator. She's from Sigma Chi chapter at Nova Southeastern University. Thank you, and take it away, Kayla.
Hi. So our moderator is Miss Ashley V. Gant, Esquire, born and raised in Miami, Florida, and is the founder and managing partner of Gant Legacy Law, PA, where she specializes in criminal defense, estate planning, and probate and personal injury. She graduated from the University of Florida in 2007 with a Bachelor of Arts in English. She was also initiated into the Iota Lambda chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. In 2016, Ms. Gant graduated from Nova Southeastern University Shepherd Broad College of Law. Upon being admitted to the Florida Bar, Ms. Gant became a Broward County Assistant Public Defender in 2016, where she advocated for the citizens of Broward County for over 2 years. Ms. Gant continues to be active in her community in various organizations. She is the immediate past president of the TJ Reddick Bar Association. Additionally, Ms. Gant is a board member for the Gwen S. Cherry Black Women's Lawyers Association and an alumni fellow of the Florida Bar W.M. Reese Smith Jr. Leadership Academy for Class 7. Ms. Gant is a member of the University of Florida Association of Black Alumni South Florida chapter. Ms. Gant also represents District 2 on the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust in Miami-Dade County. It gives me great pleasure to present to you Ms. Ashley Gant.
Thank you, Kayla, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. It is our pleasure to host this event for the citizens of Broward County. The structure of tonight's event will be, we will have 1-minute introductions from all of the candidates, and then we will have 2 rounds of questions. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to the question. And hopefully, if time permits, we will have an additional round where you, the audience, can submit questions for individual candidates or all of the candidates to answer. So without further ado, we are going to go ahead and start with the introductions. Our first introduction will be from Ms. Sheila Sherfilis McCormick. And like I said, each candidate will have 1 minute for their introduction. I will give you a 30-second warning, a 10-second warning, and then I will finally say time. And at that time, we will move on to the next one. So without further ado, Ms. Sherfilis McCormick, you may begin your introduction.
Good evening, everyone. I am Sheila Sherfilis McCormick. I am running for Congress. I sat before you guys already, and I'm happy to be here again. I can give you a brief background about myself. I did go to Howard University for undergrad and University of Maryland for my master's in business administration and St. Thomas Law School. I've been the CEO of a healthcare company now for over 10, 15 years. In that capacity, I've been fighting adamantly to ensure that we have equal access to healthcare for not only just adults and pediatrics, but for everyone in low-income areas. In addition to that, I've been lobbying in DC for the last 10 years. I initially was invited to DC because I was extremely successful in implementing the Affordable Care Act. So I was asked to come to DC and comment on what we can do to make sure it's equalized throughout the country. It's been 10 years later, and I've been advocating for our district, writing policies, amendments, getting those passed and negotiating throughout Congress. I'm here again because I'm here. It's time to fight for the district. I fight for my family very hard. I'm here to fight for you as well. I have the experience in Congress. I've been on several boards, and I thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. You did a really good job. That was a lot in 1 minute. Our next candidate to give his introduction would be Mr. Elvin Dowling. And Mr. Dowling, you may begin.
If I can help someone with a word or a song, if I can lift someone as I travel along, if I can help a stranger who's traveling wrong, then my living won't be in vain. My name is Elvin Dowling, and I have spent most of my life serving real people in a real way. I could spend the time that I have talking about me, but at the end of the day, this race really isn't about me. It's about us, and it's about you. I could tell you how I've been nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, and this year won the Florida Book Award with Congressman Alcee Hastings. But what I really want you to know is that I love the Lord. I believe in serving people. And I sued Ron DeSantis because he deserved it. I will continue to fight for the people of this district until hell freezes over, and then I will fight them on the ice. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Dowling, for your introduction. Our next candidate will be Bobby DuBose. Mr. DuBose, you may begin your 1 minute introduction.
Thank you, Ms. Gant. And first of all, I want to thank the lovely ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated for this opportunity for us to present. I am Bobby DuBose, currently the Democratic leader in the Florida House of Representatives. I am currently termed out of that position. Prior to that, I served as a city commissioner in the city of Fort Lauderdale. I am the proud husband of Yvette DuBose, and we have 2/3 children. I am a son of South Florida, and as I tell people, I am a proud product of the 33311. And I say that because I'm a product of 2 teenage parents who instilled in me, to whom much is given, much is required. And the opportunity came once we lost the great Alcee Hastings, and the void is there. And so I stepped up, and I'm also a candidate for Congressional District 20, and I'm asking for all of your support.
Thank you. Our next candidate to give her introduction will be Shelley Fain. Ms. Fain, you may begin.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shelley Fain. I am a candidate for the 20th Congressional District here in South Florida. I am a Florida native. I am an everyday working class mother and wife. I think most notable for me to mention is that I am a write-in candidate for the January 11th election. I am here to be a voice to the voiceless. I am an individual who is not a politician, but I have an interest in humanitarian causes. I have been an individual that has observed many things in the community that is troubling to me, and I want to be there to represent the individuals who feel like they have been largely ignored, while at the same time serving the entire district. I do have a vested interest in the Black community, and I do represent the Mahali Party and Mahali Party views. And our platform is to bring representation to DC for Black communities that feel like they have been ignored throughout the country and right here in this district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Our next candidate to introduce themselves will be Mr. Dale Holness.
Well, good evening,
Mr.
and thank you for having this forum. My name is Dale Holness. I currently serve as Broward County District 9 Commissioner. Last year I was the mayor of Broward County, and I got elected in Lauderhill in 2004 as a city commissioner. Throughout my time as a public servant, I've championed the rights of women and empowerment of women. I believe that equal pay for equal work is essential. Sadly, women earns only 78 cents to the dollar for a man. I've supported women and coached them as much as I can, such as Commissioner Yvette Colburn, Commissioner Nancy Metayer, help our judges like Judge Jackie Powell, Judge Phoebe Francois, and so many others. I brought before the commission just recently for us to do a diversity study to see how we contract with women and minorities. It's essential that we empower women. By doing so, we're empowering our entire community. which will bring greater prosperity for all.
Thank you, Mr. Holness. Our next candidate will be Phil Jackson. Mr. Jackson, you may begin. You're still muted, Mr. Jackson. Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I had some technical difficulties here. I'm retired vice president, college vice president, dean, and professor, a retired United States Navy chief petty officer. I've been an activist who has provided a voice for the voiceless, the poor, homeless, senior citizens, children, and families over the years, and I want to be your voice in Washington. We have to pass the John Lewis Voters' Rights Act, HR 4, and we have to pass the We the People Act, HR 1, to safeguard our right to vote, to curb the influence of big money and interest in government. We have to push Ron DeSantis to fill the vacancies in the legislature so that this community can have a voice in the legislature during the redistricting process. We have to protect our children and families in the western communities of Pahokee, South Bay, and Belle Glade from breathing harmful particulate matter resulting from pre-harvest sugarcane burns. And we have to address the persistent problem of algae blooms on Lake Okeechobee. Finally, we have to create greater opportunities for our children, and we have to build better communities for a better tomorrow.
Thank you,
Don't
Mr.
forget
Jackson.
to vote November 2nd. Bill Jackson, District 20 Congress.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Next, we'll have Ms. Barbara Sharif.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Barbara Sharif, and I am a Broward County Commissioner for District 8. I am a two-time mayor of Broward County, the first African-American female in its 100-year history. I've also served as the first African-American female president of the entire state of Florida Association of Counties. During my tenure, I had the pleasure and privilege of serving on a bipartisan health steering committee during President Obama's tenure for 9 years, trying to fix the Affordable Care Act and decrease prescription drug costs. I am a member of the 16 County Coalition Water Resource Board, and as well as the opioid lawsuit chair for Broward County. And it is a privilege to be here with you all tonight, and I look forward to exploring more about my platform on healthcare, social justice, economic stability, and a $15 per hour federally set minimum wage, and the Build Back America plan, participating in that with Florida's resources. I sat on the MPO for 13 years. And
thank you
for being here.
Dr.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. The next candidate we will have will be Priscilla Taylor.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to your forum tonight. Again, my name is Priscilla Taylor, native Floridian, born and raised in Fort Pierce, been a resident of Palm Beach County for the past probably 40 years. But after moving here, I sought to be involved. I've served on numerous boards and commissions, both here locally and nationally. I owned 2 insurance agencies from Fortune 500 companies. I sold them, and I have 2 children. I have my undergrad from Barry University, my master's in business administration from Palm Beach Atlantic University. I have served as a commissioner for the Port Authority, served as Florida State Representative, served as commissioner and first mayor, first African-American woman mayor of Palm Beach County. I would love to talk to you about some of the issues in my platform. I have always worked for the people in probably the most challenging area of this district. And I look forward to sharing with you what I have done and what I would like to do in the future. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Our next candidate will be Mike Termont.
Hi, I'm Mike Termont. I'm an economist. I used to teach economics at Nova and at Barry Universities here in South Florida and at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. I worked as an economist for the White House for a couple of years and a number of other organizations in and around the federal government in Washington for many years. I am currently a police officer. I patrol the city of Hallandale and have done so for the past 11 years. As most of you know, Hallandale is a community that has a lot in common with District 20. It's a very diverse place, whether you evaluate diversity in terms of culture or race or income or wealth. As a libertarian and as an economist, I believe that we need a fresh approach to how we deal with issues of poverty, low income. I believe that doing the same things that we've been doing in the war on poverty since the 1960s is just doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. It's not going to happen. And as a libertarian, I believe that we need a fresh new approach to criminal justice and how we manage police officers. As a police officer myself, I know that's going to be a lot of hard work, but I think I know what it takes to get that done. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And the next and final candidate we have is Perry Thurston. You may begin, Mr. Thurston.
Good evening, and thank you, ladies, for having this forum. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm State Senator Perry Thurston. I represent District 33. That's Pompano to 595, Dixie Highway to Sawgrass. I've represented that district for a while now. I'm a native of this community, born right here in Central Broward. I earned a scholarship to go off to play ball at Morehouse College, where I returned with a degree in finance, after which I earned an academic scholarship to go to the University of Miami Law School, where I interned with then Congressman Alcee Hastings. In Tallahassee, I've been unanimously selected the leader in the House, unanimously selected the leader in the Senate, and I served as chairman of the Black Caucus for 2 terms. I've championed healthcare, criminal justice reform, and public education. I'll continue to fight for those things as your congressman in DC, and I humbly ask for your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I am going to turn over the microphone to Sor Harmon, Kimberly Harmon, for further information about candidates who are not present tonight.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. It is an honor to welcome all of you this evening. And for full transparency, we had 17 people who officially qualified to participate in this election, and all of them were invited to be here tonight. So we appreciate those of you that did show. Unfortunately, one candidate, Leonard Satterfield, sent his regrets. He had a prior engagement, so he could not be with us tonight. We also had someone who was supposed to be here, and that is Dr. Imran Siddiqui. However, we literally found out about 2 hours ago that he got called back to the hospital so he can relieve some of his fellow frontline workers. We can all empathize and understand and thank him for his duty. He was very regretful that he was not allowed to be here today. So with that being said, we appreciate you all, and we look forward to hearing from you, your views, your opinions. So for sake of time, I just want to say on behalf of all of us, thank you. And thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Sor Harmon. So we are going to go ahead and begin round 1 of the questions. Now, if you need me to repeat the question, I have no problem, but every candidate will be answering this question. So the first question is, with the Delta variant of COVID spreading throughout the nation and specifically in Broward County, what is your plan of action to protect the residents of your district? And since we started the introductions from the top of my list, I'm going to go ahead and start round 1 from the bottom of my list, which means Mr. Thurston, you may answer the question. And you all will have 90 seconds to respond to each question.
You know, I really appreciate you doing that reverse order. You know, throughout my life, I had to be at the end with a name like Thurston. But I have been very instrumental in making sure that our community received testing when it was available, and that our individuals in our community were available to get the vaccine. So I will continue to work with the stakeholders to make sure that, you know, that everybody has the ability to be vaccinated. I'm one who think that unless there's some medical reason that we should mandate vaccinations, we should mandate masks. We can never get in front of this virus unless we do that. I think that we need to take this seriously because of all the agenda items that I've said that I want to accomplish. If we can't get our health care and get in front of this virus, the economy is going to shut down. All the economic development that we want will shut down. So I will continue to be at the forefront of making sure that our community is served. You know, one of the reasons I ran for office is that I wasn't all that happy with what some of our leaders was doing and whether or not they were representing our community well. So I've tried to do that by leading in Tallahassee. I'll continue to do that as it relates to this virus. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our next candidate will be Mike Termont.
Thanks very much, and I'm happy to go after Perry. I know that he's a ball player, and I guess I'm hitting eighth, but second right now. Listen, I'm a big pro-vax guy, right? I've had my 2 vaccines, looking forward to my 3rd. I'm going to be vaccinated for shingles and the flu and anything else I can shove into my shoulder. But if there is anyone out there who, because they can hear my voice, decides to go out and get a vaccine, that is a big mistake. I have had 1 course in biology in my whole life, and I wasn't that good at it in the first place. My feeling is that the government can play an important role in getting information out. But part of the reason that this issue has been so screwed up is because it's been politicized. And part of the politicization that we need to stop is the idea of forcing people or coercing people into doing things with which they're uncomfortable. We get pushback when we say you must be vaccinated, or you must do this, or you must do that. As soon as you tell people you got to do almost anything, you're going to get pushback, right? So I'm set against the idea of having mandates from the government for vaccines, or, you know, to be able to travel, you have to have a vaccine, or you have to wear a mask in certain situations. That should be up to families and parents and businesses to set their own rules.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Termont. Our next candidate will be Ms. Priscilla Taylor. Hold on, Ms. Taylor, you are not unmuted.
Am I on now?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. No, I do feel that mandates are important in view of what's going on right now with the hesitancy about getting the vaccination. I feel that communication and education is very important. What I have done as part of my campaign is actually try to communicate with the constituents the importance of getting the vaccination shot. There have been so many people who have died in my community, and we definitely have to consistently reach out and let them know how important it is to have the education as to why you must have it, and also to get them to understand that it really should not be an either or. If you want to live without having a problem as far as worrying about whether you will get COVID or the variant, I think that the idea of educating the community is very important. And I would consistently do that because I do believe in education and communication with the constituents.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor. Our next candidate will be Dr. Barbara Sharif. Dr. Sharif, you may begin.
Thank you. As a doctor of nursing practice for 28 years in the healthcare profession and being on the front line of this COVID-19 pandemic with my 200 workers in my healthcare business, 2 counties wide, I've seen that working with local governments to get vaccinations and COVID testing to our Black and Brown communities works best. We have money that's been allocated through Congress, and we have to do a better job of getting that into the communities, increasing education and community outreach programs. We need to talk about the pregnancy statistics for our Black and Brown women who are out there that are unvaccinated, with a 75% chance of death and hospitalization due to COVID-19. We have pre-existing elderly in our communities that are with diabetes and hypertension that are at increased risk of death and ventilation for longer periods of time, and chronic illnesses as a result of COVID-19. It is imperative that we elect someone to Congress who has a background in healthcare and who can handle these issues that are current today. I have handled the HIV and AIDS pandemic, been at the forefront of COVID, and have been leading in the community on this. And I think that that's necessary right now when you go to Congress. And so I think that that's what I can do to change things.
Dr. Sharif. Our next candidate will be Mr. Phil Jackson. Mr. Jackson, you may begin. Hold on, Mr. Jackson, you're muted. I'm gonna start you over. I'm gonna start my clock over as soon as you unmute. All right, so you're unmuted, go ahead.
Yeah, I was the leading chief petty officer of Naval Hospital, Jacksonville, here in Florida for about 10 years. My initial duty station, I was stationed at the Naval Medical Center, National Naval Medical Center, Bethesda, Maryland. This is where our dignitaries, including our president, former president, went to receive his treatment. Navy medicine has a national, international reputation of having the best medicine in the world. And as a Naval Hospital corpsman, I know, and my troops all know, that the best kind of medicine is preventive medicine. And that is, you should get vaccinated, you should wear a mask, you should practice social distancing, and those other good things that come along with good personal hygiene. But in addition, we need to push back on our current governor's efforts to undermine what the doctors and the nurses and all of our medical professionals are telling us, that we need to be vaccinated. We need to be vaccinated, and we need to look at how we can get vaccinations down to our children. And towards that end, we should expand our healthcare to provide a public healthcare option to every American so that no one can go bankrupt or have to agonize about how to pay their medical care. Quality healthcare is a basic human right.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Our next candidate is Mr. Dale Holness.
Thank you very much. I have firsthand experience in dealing with COVID-19, serving as Broward County's mayor last year and pulling the mayors across the county together and leadership to address the issue. We made some tough decisions. Shutting down the community for a while, which we had to do because the number of people getting sick and in our hospitals was at a point where if someone didn't have COVID and needed to be treated, they might not have been treated, would have lost more lives. So we must continue the effort of bringing the community together. And my message then and my message still is today, we're all in this together, no matter what your background is. COVID have taught us that no matter where you're from, no matter your gender, no matter your ethnicity, we are all affected by this. And all of us have a responsibility to take care of ourselves and the people around us. So I'd continue, and I'm continuing the education. In fact, some of you might get my newsletter. In my newsletter, I talk about that and inform the public where they can get treatment. I do radio broadcasts. I do texting and emailing and voice calls. We work closely with our churches. Our churches are essential to get this information out. Also ensuring that we have the protection necessary for folks out in the community. My nephew almost died from COVID. He's a radio announcer. We will do a live broadcast with him coming up shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Holness. Our next candidate is Shelley Fain.
Hello, everyone. So this is how I feel about the pandemic right now. I think that truth and transparency does need to be the order of the day when it comes to this virus. There's a lot of confusion that is surrounding what is and what isn't when it comes to handling this issue. And I honestly feel like the first thing that we need to do is trust the science. And when I say science, I don't mean science from one side of the aisle. I mean trusting the science from alternative medicine to traditional medicine and getting the truth about what is the best way to handle this virus. I don't feel that people's individual rights should be impeded upon, and I don't feel like if someone does not want to get vaccinated, they should be ostracized for it. I think that the proper education about this virus is what is going to make people feel comfortable and making an informed decision about what is the best thing for themselves and their families to do. Like I said, I don't feel as if this is a one size fits all type of thing. I do think that there are alternatives that people can use to keep themselves safe, and all options need to be explored. Because once you start ostracizing people and making them feel that their way is not the proper way, then we have the issue that we have right now, where there's so much fighting back and forth between those who are hesitant and those who are pro.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Fain. Our next candidate will be Bobby DeBose. Hold on, Mr. DeBose. Okay, I'm going to start when you unmute. All right, go ahead. You're unmuted. No, go back. One more time. Okay, there you are. Yes.
All right. So when we talk about COVID, we got to look at this in a holistic way. There's so many different layers to this. I think what this virus has spotlighted is the fact that access to healthcare has been at the forefront, and we know communities of color disproportionately receive access to healthcare. So I think what needs to be done is what's currently done. I'll continue to work with the stakeholders to provide testing as well as vaccinations. But also, I think what we need to do is to have a robust campaign in regards to the science. A lack of education has got us to this place. I think that it's okay for us to mandate masks, especially as it relates to our children and keeping them safe. What I've experienced personally with this virus is that I've lost friends and family members who have been vaccinated, but because they had other pre-existing conditions, it has caused them their lives. So it's more than being vaccinated and not being vaccinated. It's a holistic approach to having access to healthcare in communities of color, and to have a robust conversation and to educate our folks as it relates to the science, because as we approach upon another variant of this COVID virus, will continue and continue. So my plan would be to continue to educate, but also look at it in a holistic manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next candidate will be Mr. Elvin Dowling.
I believe that the challenge we have in politics today is that everybody wants to play it safe. We want to continue to have robust conversations, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how much we can shout and dance. The question is, how straight can you walk when your feet hit the floor? When it comes to COVID-19, the question became, who's going to stand up for our children? I was the first Floridian to challenge the governor's edict of no mask bans in court. I sued him in civil court, in circuit court. I did it because I believe that a member of Congress has the responsibility, and a member of this community, to stand up when we see evil, when we see wrong, to try and right it. And so that's what I did. But let me tell you what else I did. When COVID hit and government failed us, because it did, a lot of the folks who sound real good and talk about what COVID has done were in charge. And I saw long lines. I'm chairman of one of the largest food banks in this county. We have provided 20 million pounds of food to hungry people every single week. Politicians have shown up. They've shown up with cameras. We've shown up with trucks. I will deliver if you give me the honor of serving you in Congress.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dowling. And last but not least for round one is Ms. Sheila Sheriff-Phyllis McCormick. You may begin, Ms. Sheriff-Phyllis McCormick.
What we saw with the pandemic, it really highlighted the inequalities that I've been lobbying against in DC for the last 10 years, especially when it came to education and in the poorer areas in our district. But more importantly, I was on the front line with my employees. We actually were the largest Black woman-owned and led corporation that was even doing vaccines throughout the whole state. And we fought for that. We fought to make sure that the Biden administration's minority vaccination actually went towards minorities to get those contracts. And we have minorities going in and educating. When we came on board, we bought at least 3 other companies who totaled in $10 million to do the vaccination and the education. That's when we started seeing people getting vaccinated. We vaccinated over 300,000 people throughout the state. That's the problem that we had. What we saw was that the municipalities, when they received the money, they did not equitably pull down all the money, and we didn't see the contracts coming to people in the community. So the education concept was not there. That is why our children are now getting sick. That is why our community members are not getting vaccinated. The education has not been there. There has been no one to actually push through and ensure that our people who are in the community, trusted providers, are actually getting the funding to educate the community. And that is a failure on the municipalities because they did not pull down that funding. We saw in Miami that $10 million was pulled down by Daniel Cava-Levine. And in Broward County, we did not see those funds being pulled down for education. That's just canvassing. In addition to that, we see that there's another issue that's going on with education and vaccination, but we see an economic problem that's going on with COVID. There's a lot of people who are not having their jobs back. And we see inequitable. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. And stay right there because you're going to be the first person for round 2. So thank you to all the candidates for answering and responding to the question in round 1. So round 2, the question is, give one example of how you plan to help those who have lost their jobs and or are in danger of losing their homes if elected. So we are going to go ahead and start with you, Ms. Sheriff-Phyllis McCormick. And hold on, let me get my timer. Okay, go ahead.
Well, the biggest need that we have right now is an economic justice problem, and that's due to COVID. My whole platform, I tell everybody that this election is about economic justice. Please do not get it confused. What we see going on here is a lot of people lost jobs. What we see is that a lot of money coming into the United States that we've never seen funding before, and our district is not in line to acquire those contracts. Traditionally, we haven't been getting those contracts. So what I'm proposing is my People's Prosperity Plan, where we have now equitable relief that's coming into the district. That is $1,000 per month for people who are recovering, anybody who's making less than $75,000 a year. And I heard some of my opponents say, oh, that could never happen. But the reality is that they don't understand what's going on in Congress. We see the child income tax credit, that is UBI, and that is a stimulus program. But what we find with that program, which we're going to the 3rd installment, is that it leaves out seniors from that. So seniors now are being left out of economic recovery, and that seniors are more than 50%. What I'm proposing is that we actually have economic justice going forward by ensuring that it is divided by people who are making less than $75,000 a year. In addition to that, we need to make sure that we actually have people acquiring more contracts. That is my specialty when it comes to federal acquisition, when it comes to including people into getting contracts, especially minorities. You need to have someone there who's done the work, who's had people acquire that money. And we need to make sure that all of our relief is equitable. We see that over 30 cities are now proposing that people start getting some kind of recovery check that is systematic. So I say it again, we need to make sure that we all recover on an equitable level by ensuring that we're getting these checks. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next candidate would be Mr. Elvin Dowling.
you be so kind to repeat the question, please?
I sure can, no problem. And for any candidate, if you need me to repeat the question, please ask. Give one example of how you plan to help those who have lost jobs and or are in danger of losing their homes if elected.
Thank you. First, let me just say that I understand what it means to be homeless. I was homeless for a time in my life, and my first job out of college as a student at Hampton University in Virginia was working at a homeless shelter, raising money for homeless people. Now, therein lies a challenge. And what it taught me was that there but for the grace of God go I. I think a great predictor of what we want to do is what we've done in the past. I had the privilege of serving as chief of staff for the National Urban League on Wall Street in New York City, as well as on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., where we connected 436,000 people to good jobs, to economic development opportunities, where we annually serve 2 million people, helping to connect them so that they can empower themselves, empower their communities, and change lives. It's not just about what we want to do, but what we've actually done. And so I will spend my time advocating to make sure that we have the resources that we need so that people aren't homeless. We are about to experience a homeless crisis. I will make sure that we advocate for a moratorium on evictions. If not me, then who? If not now, then when?
Thank you, Mr. Dowling. Our next candidate will be Mr. Bobby DuBose.
Thank you, Ms. Gant. I think what I would do is continue to do what I've been doing on the state level, but do the same on the federal level. And that is advocating and help to bring appropriations and resources for entrepreneurship programs in our community. We do know that small businesses are the economic engine, and those are the opportunities. What happened through COVID, a lot of businesses shut down, but there are a lot of entrepreneurs and startups that got a chance. And those are the jobs that tend to employ individuals in our community. As it relates to folks losing their homes, I think we definitely need to continue the moratorium, the foreclosures, but also in that vein in addressing those that are homeless. Again, each year in Tallahassee, I will work to pull down dollars for rapid rehousing, the one national model that's known to help people who have been chronically homeless. And it's a program that gets the individual and stays with them and helps them until they're out of being homeless, not just on vouchers or a few dollars for a few months. So I will continue to do what I've done successfully on the state level, but do it on the federal level to affect Congressional District 20. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DuBose. Our next candidate will be Ms. Shelley Fain.
I believe that the first thing that we have to do is pay attention to the issue of income inequality. I think that is one of the problems that does plague our communities. The issue of not having a livable wage in order to be able to afford housing within the community. We can see that things are continuing to go up, but wages are not going up. We also do have to continue with the implementation of businesses within the community, because I do feel that small businesses are the engine of the community. We also have to deal with the fact that we have a huge poverty issue and lots of areas within the district. We have to come up with viable ways to deal with poverty so that people will be in a position that they can have a feasible income to be able to stay in their homes. And we must make sure that the jobs are paying a living wage. One of my biggest issues right now is the fact that a lot of people are facing evictions. What I would propose is that we have to get on the individuals that have the funds to make sure that this doesn't happen, because as we all know right now, there are funds in place where people do not have to be put out of their homes. What we can do as elected individuals is we can ensure that those funds are allocated properly so that people will not be faced with being out on the streets. You know, we're going to have to get boots on the ground and start enforcing these policies.
Thank you, Ms. Fain. Our next candidate will be Mr. Dale Holness.
Thank you very much for the question. We at the county has dedicated $53 million to assist those to stay in their homes through a rental assistance program. If you're in my email chain, my newsletter chain or emails, you'll see me sending that out continuously. I've distributed to many of our church and other organizations to ensure that people in the community know that these funds are available. My office relentlessly support their efforts to get these fundings. In fact, about a week ago, we did a little analysis to see how many were in need of help that were being assisted by county commissioners. 14 from my office, the next office had 3, and no one else had more than 2. Some had none at all. People know that I will be there for them to help them through this. But additionally, this basically exposed to us the inequities that exist in America. And last year I passed an ordinance creating the Racial Equity Task Force. And we must work to ensure that those who are low income, moderate income, get every opportunity to prosper and live as full a life as any other American. That's something that I will work towards. I have some planned legislation that will target government resources and funding towards communities that are low income and moderate income. We're doing that in Broward County with Prosperity Broward, something that I pushed for many years, and is joining and supporting across the county, targeting zip codes that are low income.
Thank you very much for your response. Our next candidate will be Mr. Phil Jackson.
Okay, unmute. Yes, I think we have to continue the moratorium on evictions. And we also have to provide housing grants through HUD and rent subsidies to keep folk in their homes. In addition to that, towards economic justice, we have to provide a livable wage of at least $20 an hour so that when we are confronted with situations like this, people have money that they have earned through their own labor. We have to make that child $300 a month child tax credit permanent. And we have to increase the average Social Security benefit for our senior citizens to $2,000. These are sensible measures that we can take to ensure that our population has the funds to continue to and persist through events like COVID. And we can also ensure that we don't overtax them through a regressive tax by seeking to fund what is really unfundable, a $1,000 a month giveaway to every American citizen. That would bankrupt this country. What I'm proposing are sensible measures, increasing the child tax credit, making it permanent, and increasing the Social Security benefit for our senior citizens to $2,000 a month, and increasing the minimum wage to $20
Thank you.
per hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you.
Our next candidate to respond to the question, and I'll read the question just for the last few candidates as a refresher. Give one example of how you plan to help those who have lost jobs and or are in danger of losing their homes if elected. And our next candidate to respond will be Dr. Barbara Sharif. Mr. Sharif, Dr. Sharif, you may respond.
Thank you. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to come to terms on a bipartisan federally set minimum wage. And that's at least $15 an hour so that we can help people to live, but also achieve the dream of American home ownership. Also, we need to participate in the President Biden Build Back Better plan by putting forth the water projects that need to be worked on here in the state of Florida. Our dikes, levees, dams, and our reservoirs need to be built back. Some of them are outdated and our water pumps are outdated. That's why you have flooding. He's going to fund that program. And we have to put forth those projects to create higher, better paying jobs in our county and in our state. And also with highways and transportation, based on our population growth, we would qualify for some of the funding that President Biden is putting forth. The third program that I think is imperative to pass is that we have to pass the Obama refinance program, because that saved thousands of homes. I myself saved over 3,000 homes with that program, but it needs to be put back together with an additional second chance at home ownership program with the same specs as the first time home buyer program. And lastly, we need to revisit Social Security benefits for seniors, because they are struggling right now between making choices between paying for their medication and their food. And that cannot continue to happen. Social Security should increase with the price of the cost of living.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharif. Our next candidate to respond will be Priscilla Taylor. Hold on, Ms. Taylor. You are not unmuted. So, okay, now you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that I did when I was a county commissioner was that I did work to help with the homeless individuals and having affordable housing. What we're dealing with right now, we know, has been driven by the COVID. So I would certainly work to make sure that the moratorium continue, but to also make sure that individuals are able to access this money, because we know a lot of dollars are there for eviction and to help individuals who are homeless. But unfortunately, the criteria is so difficult for them to get that money. So we need to work with local governments and the state to come up with ways that people could qualify without having to jump through hoops to get the money. Now, as far as jobs, I do feel that we should extend unemployment until individuals can really get on solid ground, because we know right now everything still is uncertain. But President Biden does have some initiatives that I do believe in that would help our community. One would be the infrastructure that will create jobs, good jobs, and it would be up to us in the communities and local government to make sure that contracts are given to the minority community. I would work to partner with companies to try to give them incentives to do hiring and to hire individuals within the minority community. It is something that will take us working together, but we can do it. And I look forward to being your representative so that I can do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor. Our next candidate to answer that question will be Mr. Mike Termont.
Thanks very much. I listened to everyone's ideas and they're just so wonderful in the short run. We all want to do something to help. And I listened to Sheila's done so much to get people vaccinated. And I listened to Elvin swear he would skate on the ice after hell froze over fighting for this community. And it's just terrific. However, you all have ideas about economics that are not just misguided and unhelpful, but actually damaging to the people of District 20. The truth of the matter is, and if no one learns anything else from anything I say the rest of my career, please take the following to heart. Poverty is a political phenomenon. Throughout our economy in the United States and around the world, we see tremendous mobility from wealthy people to middle class and middle class to wealthy people, but we don't see a lot of mobility, people escaping poverty. And the reason for that is because we have horrible public policies in place. Remember, COVID didn't shut down our economy. Governments shut down our economy. Our biggest problem is horrible public schools. We have a very difficult criminal justice system that needs to be reformed.
Recording in progress.
We need to build our economy from the ground up. Short-term solutions, bringing money in from Washington or anywhere else, doesn't develop an economy. It just puts a Band-Aid
you.
on something to make us feel better.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Termine. Our last candidate to respond will be Mr. Perry Thurston.
Thank you, Ms. Gant. And just for the record, you know, this is the format that's going to be on the ballot. I'm going to be last on the list, but first fight for our community. And what I would do is continue the fighting that I've been doing. I'm going to fight for access to trade schools and certification programs and a community college that's affordable, if not free. That's what we need. When people decide that they're unemployed, they go back to school. They need to have access to go to school, to get those jobs. What I've also done is fight for increased unemployment. You know, I led the fight to say that the unemployment benefits are way, way too low. So we want to increase that. We want to pay people a living wage. That's what we've been fighting for. That's what I've led the fight for in Tallahassee. And lastly, as it relates to the employment, we fight for the Urban League every year. I personally fought for $2 million a year for Broward Urban League, which they share for entrepreneurship. That's what we want people to do, become entrepreneurs. And then we need to fight to keep the moratorium on evictions. We need to keep the rent subsidies. We need to keep jobs coming into our community. And that child income tax credit, that will help mothers who are going back to school or getting new employment. Some of those jobs that were there before will not come back, but let's fight to make sure that there are additional jobs. That's what we're going to do.
Thank you, Mr. Thurston. Well, that is the end of round 2, and we got some really great responses because right now we know that we are facing a housing crisis, and I think we are all concerned about how our community, particularly in Broward County, will be affected. And it looks like I was going through the chat to see if we had any questions for any of the candidates. If you all have any questions for the candidates at this time, go ahead and post a question or post your question. If not, I am going, yes.
Ms. Myra Centillis from Sigma Chi was compiling those questions. Ms. Centillis, do you have any questions from the chat?
Hi, I've been continuing to monitor the chat, and no, there are no questions.
Okay, thank you. I have one last question, and then we will go into our wrap up, our closing 1 minute speeches from the contestants. This is not a pageant, okay? From the candidates. I slipped into pageant mode for a second. Okay, so the last question for the candidates, and I'm going to mix it up and I'm going to start in the middle. So I'm going to, add a little spice to the mix. And we will start with Dr. Sharif. Okay, so the question is, what are the 2 most important issues facing the legislative district, and how specifically will you address those challenges? And let me reread it because I kind of stumbled over myself. What are the 2 most important issues facing the legislative district, and how specifically will you address those challenges? And I am going to start with Dr. Sharif.
So the first that I would say it would be healthcare, and the second is.
Hold on, Dr. Sharif. I think you were muted. I'm trying to find you. Did we lose Dr. Sharif?
It looks like we lost her. Do you want to go to the next candidate?
Yes, okay. So we'll go to the next candidate and then we'll come back when we get her back online. The next candidate will be Mr. Phil Jackson. So I'll reread the question. What are the two most important issues facing the legislative district, and how specifically will you address those challenges?
Am I muted?
No, you're good. You're unmuted.
Well, I think the most significant issue confronting our district is we have to protect our Western communities, particularly Pahokee, South Bay, and Belglade, protect the children and the families there from breathing these particulate matters that, okay, I'm seeing some funny things on my screen here. We have to protect our children and our families in the Belglade area, South Bay and Pahokee, from the pre-harvest sugarcane burning, where they're having to breathe particulate matters. And this has led to a triple-fold increase in terms of the asthma experience among our children out there. That's the primary issue that I want to see addressed. And I think we need to also consider the subsidies that we're giving to the farming community out there, where they're turning around and giving tons of money back to political candidates who then do not protect our families and children in that area. The second thing I would say is to pass the John Lewis Voters' Rights Act and the We the People Act, because redistricting is extremely important at this time. I was part of the redistricting process that led to District 20, that led to District 20 back in the 1990s. Then I had an opportunity to speak to my legislators and to let them know what my position was, and to also gather data from them and report back to them as to what I thought should happen with that data and the redistricting. We will not or may not have this opportunity this time because we have a governor who may not fill the positions that some of the candidates in this race have left.
Thank you, Mr.
That's
Jackson.
important that we take care of.
Thank you very much for that response. Okay, the next candidate will be Mr. Del Holness.
Hi, thank you. Economic disparity and criminal justice. This district has some of the lowest income people, the highest poverty rate, high unemployment rate, low home ownership rate. We must address those. And we can use the legislation that have been passed already, the Opportunity Zone Act, that allow for wealthy people to invest in these communities and pay no capital gains. That's not good enough for these communities because it doesn't include them in these opportunities. We can amend that to target funding, to increase home ownership, to increase job training, skill training, education into these communities, to reduce the unemployment level, to grow the businesses and enterprises that are there that are germane to these districts, that are owned by the people in these districts, or those who live in the district that own these businesses. Criminal justice is also critical. Studies have shown that the Black community, which is this district has a majority of, don't fare well in our criminal justice system. If you go before a judge and you're Black and there's a white judge, you're likely to get 20% longer sentence. That is causing us to have more issues. We're locking up people that we ought not lock up, and we need to change that legislatively from the federal government all the way down. I've already been working on this. The Racial Equity Task Force that I passed, the criminal justice.
Thank you. Thank you. That was your time. I know you're passionate about it. Me too. We were going to go to the next person, but Dr. Sharif is back on. So we're going to have Dr. Sharif go ahead and respond to the question.
Thank you. So my answer is there's three top issues. There's healthcare, education, and social justice. On the healthcare front, we have to address coverage for all. That includes revisiting Medicare and addressing the fact that Medicare does not cover long-term care for seniors, and then educating people in terms of our Black and Brown communities and stopping some of the health disparity and lack of healthcare access. The second thing is education, opportunities for parents and for children who are experiencing generational poverty. We have to apply for more Pell Grant funding, allow for parents who want a second chance at education to have that second chance at education. In terms of social justice, looking at police policy reform, and also looking at statistics in our Black and Brown community on police contact and what that means in the long term for people having the opportunity to get second chances if they've come in contact with the law. We have to decriminalize marijuana. We have to pass a policy so that when they're policing, they're not taking people to jail for small possession, and it needs to be uniform throughout the state. There is, throughout the country, actually, there's just so many things we can do. And then the final thing that I'm going to say is there have to be common sense gun reform. As a victim of gun violence at the age of 14, I know what it's like to lose your family. And there's always a mental health component to this. So we have to look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. And next, we're going to go ahead and have Ms. Priscilla Taylor respond to the question.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Okay. This is really a very diversified district. And what we have to do is, as we address these issues, is look at how we can address the issues that are affecting everyone. One of it is the economy and the jobs. And what I would like to see done as far as the economy and the jobs is to try to work with local officials to try to bring in companies that are willing to partner and give jobs to the local people in order to give them good jobs where they can make more than just the minimum wage. Sometimes we have to have the training programs, the apprentice programs, so that we can get individuals ready and so that they can be ready for the jobs when the jobs come. Gun control is very important because every day we're hearing of someone who is getting gunned down. That is very important, and I want to work to make sure that we have the background checks, get some of those assault weapons off the street, work to push the Biden agenda because his agenda is addressing all of that. And certainly healthcare, accessibility, and affordability is very important because as we move forward, looking at how we can make sure that individuals are covered and have access to the healthcare for their diabetes and cancer and other illnesses, we need to make sure that they can afford to have the health care. So I would want to work on those three issues, but there's so many other issues that's affecting our particular district, District 20, and I would certainly want to work to make sure that Biden's agenda is fulfilled. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Taylor. And next we'll have Ms. Shelley Fain respond to the question.
Okay, so first and foremost, I've been out in the district speaking to individuals, just trying to get a feel for what it is that our constituents feel is the problems in the community. And in speaking to people, even sitting down with them in their living rooms, I think that one of the biggest issues that people feel needs to be addressed is poverty and crime within this district. It is a big problem. When I step out of my door, I see things that are very troubling to me. There is, people walking down the street that is addicted to drugs. That is also a big problem within the district. And largely, I've had people say to me that they don't feel that their elected officials have represented them properly. That is another issue that I'm hearing from people, that they feel like they don't have the proper representation right now. And that is one of the things that I am looking to do. I am looking to speak directly to the people to see what it is that they feel needs to be done, to couple that with what I feel needs to be done so that we can have an effort that is grassroots and changing the conditions of the community. Because if we're not out speaking to the people to know what it is that they would like to be done, we're not going to get a real feel for what needs to change. So that is one of the biggest issues that people are saying is affecting them right now. They don't feel that they have the proper representation, and that is something that I'm looking to change.
Thank you very much for your response, Ms. Fain. And the next candidate will be Mr. DeBose.
Was it 2 points or 3?
It's 2 points.
Okay,
2.
thank you.
But you could throw 3 in there if you like.
All right. There are many points, but I would say immediately I would probably tackle healthcare, because the variance has shown us that the lack of access of healthcare in our communities is something that's killing us. As I stated earlier, I have family members and close friends who have been vaccinated and have died because they had pre-existing conditions. I think what's also is immediate, we have to deal with the voters' rights bill. The voter suppression bill is real. We're dealing with Jim Crow 2.0. And the reason why we're able to have this forum and be in this space is because we had the right to vote. So that is something that is sacred that we have to protect. We have to address immediately in order to, in my opinion, continue to occupy the space to address these other issues. I think the third would be gun violence. It is really rising in the district, more so than ever before. I personally lost a family member, 19 years old, on Mother's Day. My young cousin, Amari Harrison, was killed because of gun violence in the wrong place at the wrong time, and just being with friends. So those would be my 3 top issues that I would address immediately. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your response, Mr. DeBose. Our next candidate will be Mike Termont.
Thank you. The 2 top issues in District 20 are poverty and the public policies that we have in place to manage it, and the need for criminal justice reform. And the issues that you all brought up are important. They need to be addressed in one fashion or another, but to be honest, they are distant third place and so on. The extent to which this district is plagued by poverty and low incomes is substantial. And the number one reason for that is the horrific public schools that we have in place. Because public schools in most of these areas have absolutely no competitors, there's no incentive for restructuring or learning how to do things differently. Private schools don't come into this district. I have worked as a public school teacher as a substitute for years and can tell you it's almost impossible to get a first-rate education in these places. Criminal justice reform has to be tackled in a number of ways. We need police reform to build back the trust between communities and police departments. We need to decriminalize drugs, as a couple of you had mentioned. This is what leads to street crime, the combination of bad schools and the availability to make a buck pushing drugs, and street crime is what leads to the drug violence. It's what leads away from schooling and the development of careers. These are the 2 top issues, and to take on other issues is a distraction.
Thank you very much for your response. Our next candidate to answer the question will be Mr. Elvin Dowling.
It's very rare that I get offended, but I was just offended a moment ago because I got a good education in Palm Beach County, and I had good teachers who taught me well, who prepared me for Hampton University. So excuse me, sir, if you think that it is impossible to get a good education in South Florida.
Very difficult.
Excuse me, it's my time. I disagree. So let me just say this. The top 2 issues, in my opinion, political corruption and redistricting. When it comes to redistricting, we have people who are on this forum right now who have resigned their position, and you're not going to have a voice in Tallahassee. If you ain't at the table, then you're on the menu. That's a challenge. Don't forget that. I think the second issue is voting rights. We have a craven, crazy governor who will do anything to stop your right to vote. I challenged him in federal court. And everybody on this forum, career politicians, lawyers, and doctors, said not a mumbling word. I will continue to speak up when I believe it's right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dowling, for your response. Our next candidate to respond to the question will be Ms. Sheila Sherfilis McCormick.
The biggest issues that I see in our district on a congressional level is economic justice and social justice. I say that they're both tied together because the things that we suffer from really are the disparities, especially when it comes to industries such as marijuana. The marijuana industry has blocked Black people out, and we know that, minorities, and yet they've targeted our children to go to jail for these offenses. That's intentional. That's a social justice issue and an economic issue. We have to realize that the reason why our kids are not getting an education, as some people are trying to perceive it, is because they constantly have this stigma that they try and put on us. But the truth is that it's the school to prison pipeline that's present, because we don't have just people in office saying that you should not be building private prisons on the same level as you're diagnosing children with learning disabilities. These are the injustices that we're facing. And unless we start removing those barriers of economics, which justify every reason why they target us, because we live in low income areas. That's one of the reasons they use to target us, as if we put that on ourselves. No one chooses poverty. No one chooses to be left out of different industries that are growing. The second issue that we find is healthcare. And I don't think a lot of people understand what happens with healthcare. It's not just Medicaid for all, but it's preventative services that we're not finding in our district because we don't have enough money for it. Diabetes is reversible. We know that diabetes is one of the biggest burdens that are on the healthcare, on healthcare. In addition to that, it's also heart failure. These are industries, if you have money, you have access. Secondly, we see a lot of our children being diagnosed with learning disabilities. If we had healthcare money going in, that would help the school system and the children. I've been fighting for that for the last 10 years, and we just passed a bill that brought in $200 million into the state of Florida for our children.
Thank you very much for your response. And our last candidate to respond to the question will be Mr. Perry Thurston.
Thank you again, Ms. Gann. I don't agree with everything that Mr. Dowling says, but I do agree with him that I've got a great education, and the opportunity to get a good education is here in Broward County. The top two issues for this district is healthcare and criminal justice reform. By criminal justice reform, I'm including voting rights in that category. Criminal healthcare, because we're one of just 17 states who didn't support the Affordable Care Act. And by not doing that, we deprived our community of $50 billion that would have stopped pre-existing conditions. We've got to get that passed. We've got to get in front of the healthcare crisis. The second issue is criminal justice reform. Yes, we need to support the John Lewis Voters' Rights Act. We need to support the George Floyd criminal justice reform. Those are actions that can turn around what's happening in Tallahassee. We didn't have the votes to stop that same SB 90 and HB 1, the same thing you see individuals in Texas leaving the state. We passed that same law, so we can stop that in Washington, D.C. And that's what I'm going to do there. I'm going to continue to fight that you've seen me fight in Tallahassee, in Washington, D.C., in Congress. And by doing so, I can assure you our community is going to be much better because of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And that was the end of round 3. And now we're going to do like Jeopardy, and we're going to have a blitz round. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. That was for some levity. So thank you all for your responses. Thank you all for your time. We're going to go ahead and wrap up, and the wrap up will be a 1-minute closing. Now, it will be structured. I will still, hold up the same cards for this 1-minute closing, and I am going to call candidates in no particular order. So we're going to do like a little spin the wheel type of thing over here. Okay. All right. So you will have 1 minute to provide your closing statement. And the first person to provide their closing statement will be Miss Priscilla Taylor.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you again for inviting me to participate in in the program tonight. I really feel that with this particular seat, and I knew Congressman Hastings just as many of the people on this panel knew him. And he was a special person, and he represented this district for a long time. There are many issues within this district. And I would have to say that experience does matter. My track record, and I do have a proven track record for working for the people within this district, and the most challenging part of the district I have represented, and that is the Glades area. So, but what we need a voice. We need a strong voice, and we need someone who cares enough about the district to make sure that that voice is heard in Washington, D.C. And I want to be that voice. I am intact with the people in the district. I know the issues that we are facing within the district, and I want to be the one to go to Washington to make sure that that voice continues and that we get solutions to these problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor. The next person will be Mr. Elvin Dowling.
So let me be clear. I am not trying to buy your vote with $1,000 a month. I am not trying to buy this election. I have been serving real people in a real way. I want to continue to do that. I am not a career politician. But I do believe that if you want a thing bad enough to go out and fight for it, to sweat blood and tears, to work day and night for it, if all that you dream and scheme is about it and life seems useless and worthless without it, if gladly you'll sweat for it, fret for it, plan for it, lose all your terror of woman or man for it, if simply you'll go after that thing that you want with all your capacity, you can win this thing. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm life member number 8511 of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I thank you for your time and I humbly ask you for your vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dowling. The next candidate to provide their closing will be Mr. Phil Jackson.
Yes, again, thank you for the opportunity to present my positions on various issues tonight. But I too have extensive experience across this country, in this community. I walked with L.C. Hastings through this district prior to his getting elected as I ran for the state Senate at that time. I was the first African-American to run for Congress in Palm Beach County in this South Florida district. After leaving South Florida for a time to work in Illinois, I also had the opportunity to set up a brown bag luncheon for someone who would become the state senator, US Senator from Illinois. He happened to also become the 44th president of these United States. I then had the opportunity to work with his Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood, on projects, and his Secretary of Labor on base realignment and closing while I was working as a dean at Cecil College. I have extensive experience, national connections that would be of benefit to South Florida if elected Congressional District 20 Congressman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. The next person we will have to provide their closing will be Mr. Perry Thurston.
Thank you very much. And thank you, ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha, for allowing me to participate in this flight 1908. You know, I've prepared for this position. I've prepared to be the leader of the Black community in Broward and Palm Beach County. And through that preparation, it came by showing leadership. When Dr. Robinson needed someone to secure $26 million for the CAS building, I led that effort. When Bethune-Cookman had a problem with their accreditation and needed $13 million, I led that effort. When the Urban League needed money, I led that effort. When all of these states of the United States did not have any representation in the statutory hall, I filed the bill that would see the first African-American, Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, serve in our national hall. I've shown leadership, and what I'm asking you to do, and humbly asking for your support, is to allow me to continue to lead in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thurston. The next person we will have will be Ms. Shelley Fain.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me. I know we don't have much time, so I'm going to try very quickly to say this. I think that one of the things that people are looking for right now is real viable, tangible change. No offense to anyone here, but I've spoken to people. They've told me that they are not satisfied with what is going on in this district. And that is very troubling to me. So my approach to this is to bring valuable, tangible change to the people of this district. One of the things that is crippling this district is gentrification. The very fabric and culture of communities are being destroyed, and that is something that we are going to have to tackle. People want real change. They don't want the status quo to continue. They want an agenda for their community up in DC, and we are representing a 54% Black district. We are not going to see any of these changes be implemented without a clear, concise agenda for the Black community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fain. The next person we'll have to deliver their closing would be Mr. Mike Termont.
Hi, first of all, I want to congratulate Elvin and Perry for getting obviously a good education, notwithstanding having started in public schools. I did too. You know, I grew up in a lower middle class community and I went to a public school. We didn't have private school options. My parents couldn't have afforded them if we did have them. And sure, I eventually found a way to get into fancy schools and grad schools, but you guys got to admit with me, it was a lot of work, right? And I can tell you that the kids that are able to go to private schools, they just have a head start. They've got a running start. And one of the things that we have to recognize about District 20 is that we don't have enough private schools. We don't have enough money because we are a district of poverty. And for us to do the things that we've been doing since the 1960s and 70s and the war on poverty and expecting the same results, it's crazy.
Thank you for your closing response. And the next person we will have will be Ms. Sheila Sherfilis McCormick.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. And I just wanted to address one thing. I understand that Elvin Dowling is truly intimidated by my success. I am a child of immigrants. I've worked very hard. I've ran businesses that made over $20 million. And you should be intimidated because I'm tough and I'm relentless and I win and I know how to get it done. I've created over 1,200 jobs during the pandemic when people are laying off. I paid them over $20 an hour. Yes, I get the job done. I've advocated in Congress. I've passed bills. I've lobbied Democrats and Republicans. I know how to be democratic and diplomatic. But I say this to everyone in the race. I'm here to fight for you. And just like how Alvin's intimidated, people in Congress are intimidated because I'm competitive. I take all my success and I bring it for the community, and I'm not afraid to fight. I have tenacity, something that some people here don't have because they just throw cheap shots. But when you become strong enough, you can compete and you can fight for the community like I am doing. So one day we'll see what real true courage takes. And when I'm in Congress, you'll see that because I'm not afraid to fight for $1,000. I have letters here of people who tell me they need $1,000 to pay their bills. Tell me how we're going to recover. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your closing response. And we'll have Mr. Dale Holness provide his closing response.
Again, thank you very much to AKA for this forum. I'm honored to have had the endorsement of Congressman Hastings before he passed. And the reason he did that is because he knew I would be the fighter that would continue to build on his legacy and even take us in a different direction in some ways. I've been the chair of the Broad Black elected officials for some time now, about 6 years. And under that, I built the Broad Black Action Plan that deals with many of the issues we face: economic issue, development issue, health issue, criminal justice, education, housing, political empowerment. I will continue that fight. I have a legacy of delivering service, of being there for the community, for all of the community. But focus has to be on the Black community because that's the community that's often left out, locked out, and too often locked up. If we want to build prosperity for all in this country, we must do what's necessary to empower those who've been left out and left behind so they can live to their fullest potential. There's a study that showed that we lost.
Thank you, Mr. Holness. I saw you were getting riled up. Thank you so much. Next, we will have Mr. Bobby DeBose. Excuse me.
Again, thank you, ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, for allowing us to participate in this forum. And as a member of the Divine Nine, member of Kappa Alpha Psi, I appreciate this format. I would just say, I would encourage you to look at my leadership. And more specifically, I was the leader during a very trying time in the legislature when we were dealing with voter suppression bills and anti-protester bills. But what I was able to do was still pass key legislation. I passed a legacy bill that helps students with disabilities, some of our most vulnerable, a rare disease advisory council bill that helps folks that are in our community. I lost my mom to a rare disease, scleroderma. They disproportionately affect women of color. And also was able to fight institutional racism within our Florida statute by being able to pass a bill to allow a Black woman that has a company to receive a waiver for her insurance company. That's how institutional racism is, past legislation. So again, I ask for your support for Congressional District 20.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeVos. And last but not least, we have Dr. Barbara Sharif.
Thank you. So I am a proud member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and a member of the Links Fort Lauderdale chapter. I'm going to say this in closing, that if you send Dr. Barbara Sharif to Congress, you have a healthcare advocate, you have a businesswoman who's run over 20 years, the largest home healthcare company in South Florida. At present, between Broward and Dade counties, over 200 frontline healthcare heroes, and I am one myself. As the only healthcare professional and nurse in this race, I understand what's plaguing our community. I'm going to support small businesses by creating better access to funding, creating jobs in our community to stop generational poverty, and work with our police departments to create public policy, policing policy nationally that supports our Black and Brown communities not being racially profiled anymore and thriving. I thank you for the opportunity tonight. To my beautiful sorority sisters, I love you, and we will continue this work in Congress.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. And thank you to all of the candidates for, again, spending your evening with us, for providing us with thoughtful and thorough answers to the questions. And I thank my sorors for allowing me to moderate this panel. It is my distinct pleasure and honor. And with that, I will turn over for closing remarks to Soror Henrietta Davis and Soror Lisa George.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to give a sincere, warm thanks to all for your participation in this very informative forum. We are grateful for your concerns and contributions for the community. On behalf of Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated and the Zeta Rho Omega chapter, we wish you all the best in the race. Thank you. I will now turn it over to Lisa George.
Thank you, Henrietta. Excuse me. Indeed, this has been a wonderful, wonderful evening. And as Dr. Osgood stated at the very beginning, this is our second event with Pearls in Politics. And Zeta Rho took the lead last time, and Upsilon Xi took the lead on this occasion. But I certainly want to give applause and commendations to those persons that supported this endeavor. And they are the members of our Connection, which is our social action committee. And those members of the Upsilon Xi Mega chapter are Gina Austin Stewart, Lisa Bell, Linda Brown, Katrina Devis, Edith Gooden Thompson, Hazel Gresham, Margaret Hayes, Sandra Irish, Rose Merritt, Latasha Ponder, Deborah Simpkins, and I would be remiss if I did not, of course, we also had, I forgot to mention, we also had support from Sigma Chi as well. For those, they did the presentation, and they also monitored the chat for us. Kayla Uttenreiter as well as Myra Santillis. So we're very grateful to them as well, who served as members of this committee, along with Devon Flowers and Sharon Goodwin, who serve as graduate advisors at Nova Southeastern for the Sigma Chi chapter. But our biggest cheerleader is Dr. Ramona Relaford. She is president of the Unstoppable Upsilon Xi Omega chapter. We thank her for her leadership and for the opportunity to present this forum this evening. And with that, Dr. Relaford, I hand it over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, Sigma Chi chapter, Upsilon Xi Omega chapter, and Zeta Rho Omega chapter. Thank you for joining us this evening for our second annual Pearls in Politics. The purpose of this virtual event was to provide you, the congressional candidates, an opportunity to present yourself to the members of our organization and members of our community. You did just that. Thank you. We were able to find out information about you and hear about your views about pertinent health matters, how to help those during this national pandemic, and about issues facing legislative districts. Hearing from you helps us to make well-informed decisions. So thank you so much to our candidates. Thank you to all of the members of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, especially the amazing ladies of the Unstoppable Upsilon Xi Omega chapter who